Hello people, new year and new car. I found this used old 1/8 scale track car, Nitro car, on the internet, and I bought it for about $250. And this is an old Mugen Seiki car called MRX4X. I think it was released around 2006 or 2007. And for how many years, I'm not sure, maybe a few years this model was out. So I found this car used, as I said, and I just wanted something different. And I like to drive Nitro, and I wanted an on-road car. I was wondering to get the 1/8 scale GT or touring car, but on one of the asphalt tracks outdoor that we have that is well suited for this kind of on-road racing, we are not permitted to use Nitro cars, at least not yet, maybe later, but not for now. So I decided to buy a Hubao VTE 1/8 scale GT electric car, and that I will show later. I've not received it yet. But then I saw this car used and for a good price, and with a lot of spare parts also. It came with also an engine. I just had to add the electronics, the servos and receiver. But so I decided, all right, I gonna buy this also then, because I like Nitro and I can use this car on sort of asphalt car park racing. Of course, I have to find a location with fine even asphalt and not too much gravel or sand or something like that. So I don't have a real track to drive this car on, but since it was quite cheap, I bought it anyway. So let's just take a look. First, see here that it also came with the original box, because this is a kit car, so you buy just the kit and then you install the engine that you want. So some specifications help, but this is an old model. I think the newest is called MRX4X now. Also, I got the original user manual. Nice to have. So let's just see. This is the typical body you see for these cars. Do they call that pan cars? I know very little about this type of cars, and as I said, I'm not gonna race in competition races. I'm just gonna use it for, I would not say bashing, but I would just say hobby racing. But this is the type of body they use, and are there any real cars that looks like this? I'm not sure, but this body is optimized for the aerodynamics. So with a body shape like this and with this build up here on the rear end, they say the wind on high speed will press the car to the ground, so it will have very high grip on the ground, so you can have high corner speed, of course, if you also have good grip with the tires. So the only thing that's sticking up there is the tank. So you have the lid here, so you can open and quickly fill here, and you have this you can use to carry the car, but this also gives some protection to the cooling head here and the air filter here. And here you see that they have put on a rubber exhaust extension here, so the exhaust comes outside of the body, at least most part of it. So this is the body. I also bought the new unpainted body, but I think I'm just going to use this body in the start and see how I like it, and yeah. So it's sort of blue and orange with some stripes there in different type of colors. So let's get off this body. I'm not sure if this car is upgraded. As I said, I bought this car with the engine, and I had to install myself 2 servos. This servo is for the throttle and the brake, and this is for the steering. And I see here you have this mount here for the receiver, but I found space for the receiver here. I don't like too much stuff hanging on the outside here, because sometimes we either get another car that hit you on the side, or if you slide and crash into something. So I would try to not have too much stuff on the outside. I see some of these cars have sort of a protection that goes, I think it's mounted on the chassis, and it goes a bit out and rise up, just some bars, or what they call it, metal bars, almost like this here, but they on the outside. And of course that's to protect the parts on the car here. But you can see it's a very open design. So what we got there is, of course, we got the Nitro engine, and it's a 2-speed transmission here, or gear shift. So you have 2 pinions there, and you have 2 spur gears. I don't remember the tooth there, but on the first gear, where the car goes slowest, it uses the smallest pinion here, and it also uses the biggest spur. So when it shifts, it will shift to a bigger pinion and a smaller spur. So of course the car is doing that so it can have higher speed on the same engine RPM. And I'm new to this stuff, not expert at all, but how it shifts, it's in this 2-speed gear here. You have a 2-speed clutch down there. You can see this metal part down there. And what is happening is that when this is turning fast around, the centrifugal force, or what they call it, will you have the clutch shoes that will open up, and that will get the gear to shift, really. But I'm not quite sure in details how it's working. But that's the easy explanation. So let's also see another typical design of these cars. As you can see, is that you have front wheels that are a bit more narrower, so the rear tires are wider, and it's foam tires. It's not rubber, it's foam. Also you have this way to mount the cars. You have this clip here. You take it out like this, and you just clip off. You can see here. So you have this pin here that goes into one of these, and you have this sort of hook, or what you call it, with a spring here. So it can go down like that, but when you push the wheel in here, it will grab around on the outside. So you can see if I can mount it again. There, you heard a click sound, then it goes in. So it's really easy to change it's the same on the rear, easy to change take on or take off the wheels. And another typical thing about these cars is it's very low ride height. I have made the ride height a bit higher here, really. I think the user manual says, let's see, I think it was it 7.5 in the rear and 6.5 millimeters in the front. That is the stock setup. And even this front bumper goes a bit lower also. And then you have the body that also sits very low. I have also cut away about 5 millimeters just to get a bit more clearance, because as I said, I'm not going to drive on really flat even asphalt track, racing tracks. I'm going to use it on parking lots and that style of types. So I just have to find some place where I can drive this car. So I have raised the ride height about 5 millimeters both in the rear and the front. So I think I have maybe 12 to 15 millimeters in the rear and maybe about 10 to 12 millimeters in the front. This engine here that I got with the car, it's an old, what it's called, Sirio, and it's a CL7R STi. And for what I understand, that's quite a good engine, and it's still got good compression. So I'm not sure if this engine has been used that much, or if they have upgraded, also they have shifted the piston and the sleeve, because usually the piston and the sleeve will wear out and you lose the compression and power of the engine. But maybe they have fixed that. It's got very good compression really, but it looks a bit old when I look at this this exhaust pot here, and maybe also some parts like the tanker. It just looks a bit old. Other than that, I'm not sure what they have really done to this car. I'm not sure if it comes with this body post here in metal as stock or if they are upgraded. And I can see some suspension blocks here are upgraded to metal. I believe they are plastic stock. Yeah, other than that, I'm not sure. And this is under the car. You can see how narrow the chassis is, and it's really thick. I'm not measured it, but I think it's I'm not sure if it is 5, 6 or even 7 millimeter, this chassis. And here you have the battery tray, and you have to unscrew 3 screws here to get out this plate, and the battery is just lying inside here. So the battery is fixed in the car. So I bought a life battery, and I don't have a switch, on-off switch. So this is the cable from the battery. So when I start the car, I'm really just plug it into the receiver, the battery. So I have to remember to unplug when I'm finished driving. Also here you can see the balance plug. So I have to have both cable here so I can get the battery inside the car charged, because I want gonna charge the battery as it is inside the car. But that's okay solution for me, because I'm not gonna drive in long races and I'm not gonna drive that long, so I have to change the battery. I will just charge up the battery before I go driving, and the battery, I'm not sure, but I guess it will hold for 2 hours or more driving time, and that should be enough for me. And if I'm travel away and have this car with me or gonna race somewhere else, I can just have time to charge up the battery. That should be okay. And here we have the air filter, and I changed the air filter itself inside here. So that's new. I also have checked that the tubes and the tank, and it looks okay. I can't see any holes or something like that. And the rubber parts here look okay, also on the exhaust, so it's not leaking air or anything. And it's using a turbo plug, glow plug, and I think it's using a OS P7 plug. But the man who used this car before me, he was using 25% nitro, and I'm gonna use 20% nitro. So I bought a new P7 OS glow plug, but I also bought the P6 glow plug that's a bit hotter. So when I test this car with 20% nitro, if I find that it's not holding the idle or it's stalling too much, I can try to change to the bit hotter P6 glow plug to see how it goes. But this is just the stock glow plugs, the glow plug that the car came with. So I'm just going to use that. I maybe have to check first with the glow plug igniter that it's working, but it looked okay, but of course I have to see it also. So what I've done, as I said, I have installed the servo for the power and brake and also the servo for the steering, and of course I've centered the steering servo so the car is going straight, and I checked that the throttle and brake servo is set up, and with the linkage here I set up so I have an idle gap about 0.5 millimeters. I've not changed that was how the car came, and I think that's at least a good start, so I'm gonna have it on that. And I checked that when I on the transmitter give maximum throttle, I have the carburetor opens 100% and not too much, and when it comes to idle again it goes down again to 0.5 millimeters idle gap, so it will not close more if you brake. And I also tested the brakes a bit just to see that I have brakes and they are not too strong or not too weak, but I have to test the car, maybe I have to give the brakes a bit more. But the brakes I'm just setting about right here with the linkage, and then I can adjust the brakes on the end point on the transmitter. So I think on the transmitter now the brakes are set to 30%. That will say that the reverse is set to 30% endpoint. So if I need more brakes, I can just raise that. That will pull harder on the servo, and that should pull harder on the brake here. As I know of, it's only brake plates in the rear, so you don't have any brakes in the front, as I know of. But of course the car have these rubber, or what they are, Kevlar or rubber belts, so it's a four-wheel transmission. From the engine we have this belt that goes to the rear axle. That's the belt you see here, if you can see it. I can use this to point. So you have the engine here, the pinion, and go to the spur gear, and then you have a belt here that goes to the rear spool, or what it is. And for the front you have this belt here, longer belt that goes all the way from here to the front spool, what they call it, the mid spool or something, and then you have a belt here also to the front spool. So we really have 1, 2, 3 belts on this car, and I got spare belts because I heard that belts can break if you're driving outside and get some rocks or something inside here. You could maybe crack a belt. I also not sure how well the belts hold up if you do a lot of acceleration and braking. And if you brake a lot, I also heard that the spur gears can wear out. So, because when you race on a track, you are maybe a bit more careful with the brakes. I'm not sure, maybe they are using the brakes hard also on the track. But usually, of course, you don't want to brake, you want to hold the car up in speed all the time. But when you come into a sharp turn, you of course have to brake some. But when I'm doing more like basher racing on the car park or something like that, I'm maybe gonna use the brakes a bit for fun, to get the car to slide or something like that. So maybe I'm gonna use the brakes a bit harder. I'm not sure. I just have to see. If that's so, if I find that I wear out the spur gears too easy, or if I start to break belts, I have to drive maybe a bit more carefully. So that's just the driving style. So it looks good, I would say. Here we have the user manual. Let me just see. As I bought this used, it was of course assembled, so I don't have built this car. So I'm not really sure about all the details about this car, how it's working in details. But what I have checked the setup, since I also had to rise it up, the ride height. And I had some time before I found out where the droop screws in the front were. You have two holes there and you have a screw inside here. So you have, this is the inside here, you have the droop screw. So you can get the arms a bit lower, so you will get higher ride height. But then of course you also have to tighten the shock springs here in the front. So I've done that. And for the rear, the droop screws are in more common position, would I say, what I'm used to for other cars. So we have droop screws here on the arms that's going into the, or are resting on the chassis here. So you turn that of course with the, on the upside here. So also here I did adjust the droop screws and tighten the tension on the shock springs. Another little, I've not seen that before with this car, is that when I try to push down on the car here, nothing really happens. It's just stuck. And that's because this part is not it's not connected to the springs. So it's unspring, this body part here. So the body will sit resting. No, it will fixed. It will not be going that much up and down. Because here you have the part of the car that's moving. But you can see the body mount is not moving. It's fixed to the hubs and the wheels, if you can see that. Maybe if I turn it a bit like that. You can see here the body mount and posts are not going up and down, but the chassis is going up and down. So this is connected to the hubs and the wheels. So that's a bit strange design, but I guess that's a good design. It's not so in the front. In the front, the body parts are connected to this bumper part there, and everything is connected also to the shocks here in the front. So all things is moving up and down. But yeah, so that was the droop screws in the front and in the rear. And then we can see what else. For the camber in the front, you just use, let me see, you just use these screws inside here in the hubs. And for the toe, you of course just use the steering links there on both sides. And the default setup, I don't remember the stock setup, but you have usually a toe out about 2 degrees, and you have a camber that's inwards also about 2 degrees, so the wheels are a bit pointing this direction like that. So So it's more on the inside, on the up here, and yeah, you understand. That's very common setup for really nearly all RC cars. In the rear, you have, I think the camber was it 3 degrees stock? So it's a bit more to the inside, like that. And also you have toe in on the rear. On the front you have a bit toe out, but in the rear you have a bit toe in. Of course you can adjust that. So camber, just use the screws in the hubs, and for the toe use the steering links. And for the rear, let me see here. For the rear, you have this small arm here, up arm, or you can call it camber link or what you call it. And inside there you have this metal screw that you can, almost exactly like a camber link, I would say. So you just have to turn this, and to turn this I found out that it was easier to unscrew this shock and use a small Braco key. And then you can adjust the camber. That's how the wheels are going in this direction. I had to adjust this a little bit, I remember, after I did adjust the ride height. And for the toe, how it was about the toe now. Let me take off this wheel and see. Yeah, you have this hub again, and you have 2 screws here. So for the toe, you adjust the length of these screws, how much they are inside, so you can turn this hub like this. So it's quite set up like a stock setup now. So I will just try the car as it is and see how it works, and I think it will probably be excellent, because I'm just going to use it on parking lots and more basher racing. So I'm not an expert on setup, and since I'm not racing in real competitions like Norwegian Championship or pro level or anything, I don't have to have the perfect setup. As long as the engine is running good and not stalling and the car is behaving good, I'm satisfied with that. But now I show the camber and toe in the front, and also the camber and toe in the rear. And then we have one more thing that's a bit fun to know how to adjust. That is the 2-speed unit here, or just the 2-speed clutch. You have the 2-speed clutch here. So I have 2 spur gears. I want the car to shift gear when the engine is up to some high RPM. And it should not shift too early or too late. And the way you adjust it is that in this 2-speed clutch here, let me see if I can get some more light here. You have this 2-speed clutch here, this metal piece here, and there, here in the user manual on page 8, they show this drawing here. This is the 2-speed clutch, and if you have to assemble it and make sure that it's correct. But you have 2 screws, one here and one there, with a spring. And it says by using these 2 screws, shifting time, also that is when the gear shift, shifting time will be earlier if the screw loosens and delayed if the screws are tightened. So you just adjust these screws. If the cars are shifting too early or too late, you can adjust it here. And also, of course, it's a stock setup, and that is what this drawing here is showing. And where can you find the screws now when the car are assembled? Well, you have to turn this you see, I'm not sure if it's possible to see it, man. You have a hole here that you can see through. And when you're turning the spur gears, this hole, you can keep this hole in the same location, but you can sort of change what you see inside. So by using this movement here, it's hard to explain really. You just have to see it. You will get to these screws because this this cup here, or what it's called, outside this clutch have this hole, and by turning this spur gears you can see through this hole and you can get to the screws. That's the short explanation. I'm not sure if I can really show that any better now, but you will get to the screws and you can adjust the shifting of the gear. So I just have to test the car and see how it works and if I can hear the engine RPM and if it's shifting gear too early or too late. Yeah, other than that, I don't think it's more to say really. So I'm just seeing through this user manual. What? Of course, this is a 2007, 2008 or something like that car and user manual. One thing that was missing here, I think, is details about how to set up. Of course, you get the stock setup sheet, but it would be nice if the user manual had actually explained how to adjust the toe and camber and droop and gear shift and everything in more details maybe. But alright. So now you get a video on YouTube in year 2023. That's some years after this car was released. So maybe you have waited all the years to find a video about how to adjust the setup. Well, it's maybe never too late, but yeah. Of course, one thing when buying an old car like this is that you should maybe check, is it possible to get spare parts? And I checked, and some spare parts are still available online, but some spare parts are looking a bit hard to get. This car came with some spare parts, so I think I have enough for some time, but some things I've not found yet is the front hubs. So I think I'm gonna look for them a bit more to see if it's possible to get it. At least maybe two front hubs and have them in spare. A bit odd that and even Mugen Seiki on their website, the EU website, have some spare parts for this car, but they are not in stock with the front hubs. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna get them on stock later or what. So what I did to this car, I did raise the ride height, and that was by using the droop screws in the front and in the rear, and then tighten the spring load here. And of course I installed the electronics and checked everything there. Also checked the fuel tubes and not any leak. And these rubber parts here, exhaust into the engine, and here the connection here, you should check that's not leaking there. Also, this looks good, this rubber part here on the carburetor. And of course I also checked other parts that it's not any broken parts on the car, and I did just check the screws that they are tight. Also these cars here, the 1/8 scale track cars, this flywheel, it's going same direction as the chassis. If you buy a 1/8 scale truggy or buggy, usually the engine have the flywheel setting on the 90 degrees, so in this direction. So you have to check that your starter box can start up the engine when the flywheel is in this direction, the same direction as the chassis. I'm not sure, maybe some starter box can twist the rubber wheel, but I had to buy a starter box that will fit this type of cars. Yeah, also I checked the toe and the camber on the wheels, and you can do also this check with your car after you finish most of the setup, that when you lift the car from the center here, you should see that both the tires are clearing the ground at the same time. Also when you're going down and you drop down the car slowly, you should see that both the tires are hitting the ground at the same time. So you don't have one tire that is lower than the other. That would be not the correct setup, and that you should check both for the rear and for the front. So that is also checked. What did I read? I think I read that the stock shock oil, let me see here now. Where did I find that? Here, the stock silicone oil in the shocks are 600. I'm not sure what it's inside this car now, but I feel it's quite stiff setup, but it's not jumping like when you drop it, that it's bonk 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 bouncing off. So I'm just gonna keep it as it is, and I can't press the car completely down to the ground, so the chassis can hit the ground, but I'm not gonna jump this car. But of course, if you drive on a not completely even asphalt parking lot and you get this car up to high speed, and of course if you hit something, it could even just be a rock or something, or a small uneven part, the car could take off and jump, of course. I'm not sure what speed this car will get up to. So the seller told me that this engine is really angry, and by saying that the engine is angry, he means that it's got a good high RPM, and I think it also will deliver good power. Again, it's the Sirio CL7R STi. I think it's Italian made. I read something about this engine, and about year 2007-2008, I think this engine was good. And also Kyosho, I believe some Kyosho cars in that years back then came with Sirio engines. So maybe some people know a lot more about that history. I'm not sure if they are making new Sirius engine now, but I for sure just gonna use this engine, and since I'm not gonna drive this car very much, I just hope that it's working and that it's can use this engine. If not, I have a spare HPI 0.21 engine also. So I could maybe shift engine later if I need to do that. But this is a type of on-road engine, so I think these engines are made so they can go on high RPM for a long time. I'm not sure what the different is with a on-road and off-road engine, but I think this is a sort of an on-road engine. If I shift to the HPI engine, that will be more of an off-road engine, but as long as the car goes okay and I get the gear shift, so you can have that sweet sound when the car is shifting gear. Sweet sound when the car is shifting gear, that will be okay. Anything more? I don't think so. But the weather in Norway is cold, and we have winter and we have snow outside now. So I think it's going to be some time before I can test drive this car. Maybe some months to that, because I have to get some dry weather, and I would like the temperature to be at least around 10 degrees Celsius. So maybe we have to wait 2 months or even 3 months before we have weather to drive this car outside. And I also have to find a good place to drive this car. So that's all for now. A bit sad that I'm not allowed to drive this car on the asphalt track that we maybe gonna drive a bit on this summer. That would be really nice. But as this car is old and the spare parts are a bit hard to get, maybe it's okay to not use this car that much. Just use it for a more relaxing free time type of driving, and hope that you not crash into too much stuff. It's a very nice design, and you can really see that it's set up for racing. It's not much parts here that are unnecessary or what should I say, set up like a hobby car where they are more into the details of the car to look realistic. It's just the engine on a chassis and some parts to get the suspension and the transmission to work on an optimized way. And this is carbon fiber, this plate here, so it keeps the weight a bit down, but you have this really thick chassis, but of course that will also keep the center of gravity a bit down. Yeah, so runtime with full tank, I think it's about 10 to 50 minutes if you're not driving too hard. Alright, come back later. Bye bye.